that like mine was those who do the karaoke. So I am Laurie, and I'm a professor in neurology at the University of Iowa. I'm a neuromuscular disease specialist. I spent 4 years working at NIH in the midst of my career with the external clinical trials office, and pleasure working with both Robin and Wendy in the past. And I've been involved in ALS clinical trials as well as currently other neuromuscular trials, and currently some myotonic dystrophy trials. I'm a director for this course. And this is really easy to introduce yourself like that. So we're going to have Brett, who is a friend of mine for a long time. I'm happy to be able to talk to him. Brett Kissela is the chair of neurology at the University of Cincinnati. He's done some wonderful work with stroke trials, and we're both going to get a chance to talk to you a little bit about work that you did with PROM.
Good morning. So throughout the course so far, you have heard a lot about how to choose good outcome measures, and I think those talks have been very well done and very valuable. And I hope what you take away from this talk is a little bit of a better understanding about patient-reported outcome measures. I wouldn't say are new, but I think are certainly gaining more and more traction. And we have some basic information about what a patient-reported outcome measure is, and that part's not too exciting. But at the end, we'll have some nice examples for you, showing probably how these are made and what their value might be. And along the way, we're also going to talk a little bit about health-related quality of life and what that looks like as a measure. It's something that I've spent a little bit of time in my research career working with, and at first I couldn't get my arms around it. It feels kind of squishy. It's sure not like mortality, which is easy to measure, and it's sure not, counting strokes or something like that. But it's really valid and important to measure that I think is getting increasing importance, so we'll talk about that a little bit. So when you have a boring topic, you have to pick a good title, and we picked your data at the PROM, PROM standing for Patient-Reported Outcome Measures. And it's just what we talk about a big picture. Thanks to the magic of Photoshop or many other apps that you can find on the App Store yesterday at 5 o'clock. In 10 seconds, you can make a picture just like that. So here's our outline for the talk. We're going to talk a little bit about why patient-reported outcome measures are important, speak about the role of the patient in science, the FDA regulatory guidance. I've given you several readings, which are listed sort of at the end and in the Dropbox. And Laurie, I wanted to point out to you that if you see the words FDA regulatory guidance, you're probably immediately going to run away. But this is actually a well-written document that's easy to read. Laurie informs me because I ran away from it. But this would be a good reading for you guys to, if you want to do one reading about this topic. We're going to talk about, just briefly, patient-reported outcome measures and how that might impact your clinical care, how we get paid for clinical care in the future. I think that's worth a few seconds. Then we're going to talk about the science of PROMs, how to develop them, how to validate them, and then we'll show you these examples. So, just by way of rationale, I think this is a value statement that we could all agree with, that incorporating the patient's perspective to patient-reported outcome measures is a crucial element for clinical care, quality performance management, and clinical research. We care what the patient thinks. More and what we really want to involve our patients, of course, as we design clinical research, and have them give their opinions throughout the research, express how they're doing, and help us at the end to make these meaningful results. So a patient-reported outcome measure is any report coming directly from the patient regarding their health condition and treatment, symptoms, functional status, and health-related quality of life. Some are generic and can be used for anything, and some are disease-specific. And there's some debate in the literature around measures about what's better, right? A good generic measure may be just as good as a disease-specific measure. What it is and isn't. So by definition, it's not a proxy reported measurement, but many of the patient-reported outcome measures have been validated for proxy use. We work in the neurosciences, and this is an area where our patients can't always speak for themselves or can't answer the way they would like to. And so it's really important to have proxy-validated measures, and most of them that are neurospecific are proxy-validated. It's not sort of an observer-reported measurement, right? So all the things we would typically measure, whether it's muscle strength or volume infarct on a CT scan, these are not direct measurements. This is something you're asking the patient about. They're giving their best answer. Although we're going to see some examples where, in fact, you can combine observer-reported measures along with patient-reported outcomes into one outcome measure. So what a PROM is one way to get information that's useful for clinical care research, and it is reported of symptoms or health state. So usually what you have is a theoretical framework that explains why you think the questions you're asking be valid, with multiple domains that you'll assess with the measure. So the role of the patient in clinical care and research, I think that certainly in clinical care, we all face the time pressures of having short time windows to see our patients and trying to get as much information as possible. And I would argue that some of these PROMs are quite useful and can be implemented into your clinical practice. So it's one way for a patient to quickly tell you important information if they filled out a questionnaire before they come in. Many of these PROMs are built right into the electronic health record. So Epic has a number of them built right in. An example that I'll discuss later is the PHQ-9, which is a very good depression measure. In research, the PROM can be something that can provide information that's otherwise hard to obtain, and I have an example about spasticity. Laurie's going to tell you about how PROM sometimes can outperform clinical measurements. Health-related quality of life is something that we probably don't assess in a routine fashion as we're doing clinical care. And in a lot of research studies, we are thinking about it, but not always. And I would just, again, take a moment to say that health-related quality of life measures are valid, they're meaningful, they're reliable, reproducible, and it's a very solid science. If you've ever taken a health-related quality of life measure, you're kind of giving your opinion. So again, it feels a little squishy, but it turns out to be very valuable. And I think it's an important clinical perspective that tells us how a patient's really doing. So here's some examples I've listed for you here. Depression, the PHQ-9 is a 9-item measure that can assess depression symptoms within the past 2 weeks, or a typical 2 weeks, and it can be shortened to a PHQ-2, which is the 2 major symptoms of depression, which is anhedonia and low mood over a 2-week span, more than expected, which are the major DSM diagnostic criteria, but very reliable as a patient-reported outcome measure. I've listed a number of health-related quality of life measures. In some of my research, I've used these particular ones. The generic ones, the EuroQual 5D, the SF12 or 36, short form 36, can be shortened to 12, or those are both generic measures, and then we have the sort of quality of life is one that I particularly work with. That's a disease-specific measure. If you have a chance, I would urge you to look at the website for PROMISE project. An NIH-funded project started in 2004, a multi-center cooperative that created basically a computerized adaptive testing system, really meant to be a comprehensive way to assess many domains of patient-reported outcomes. So the idea was to build and validate a common accessible item bank to measure key symptoms and health concepts across a variety of chronic conditions. So really a very quickly adaptable way to use a PROM. And there's neuro-specific versions of this. The NeuroQOL and the NIH Toolbox are easily available and useful both for clinical and research applications. And the idea for many of these is that computerized adaptive testing is a way of asking questions in a sequential fashion that maximizes the data input and is able to give you maximal information with the fewest number of questions. And a lot of time and effort was put into this. The Northwestern group is one of the primary drivers, and it's really very quick and functional to get information in a meaningful way. These are pictures. We chose one paper for you to read that had some really nice diagrams for conceptual purposes. It's actually kind of a poorly written article, to be honest with you, but the pictures were good. So here's just two pictures, and you can see on the top picture, just the conceptual framework. You have a concept. Again, my example was spasticity in the post-acute stroke domain. And so within the concept of trying to study that, you have different domains that you're worried about. And then for those domains, you would create items that you think are going to maximally inform the final answer about those domains. And on the bottom, you're seeing just a very crude picture that you have a disease, you want to study a treatment, and the way to look at the effect of those treatments is to look at biochemical tests, physical exam, or then assess the symptoms of the disease. And that's how you might incorporate this into as part of the way that you're going to assess outcome. And for health-related quality of life, I just thought this was a good picture, just as a reminder, and you all know this, that there are many things that really affect your quality of life. So here it's listing all the kinds of different domains, social domains, psychological, physical, treatments you receive, economics, disease symptoms, your cultural circumstances, all factors that play into your own personal quality of life. Now I turn to Laurie to talk about FDA guidance.
Okay, so when we divided up this talk and I agreed to do FDA guidance, I was like, oh, okay, this will be fun. But I do have to say that it's a 43-page document, of which after page 30 is a glossary and a bunch of references. So it's really only a 30-page document to read. It does also have some nice illustrations in there, but it is pretty straightforward, and although it talks a lot about patient-reported outcomes, it's also just a good review of just clinical trial design, because designing patient-reported outcomes is pretty similar to designing other types of outcome measures as well, with just a few caveats. And so in 2009, the FDA decided that they didn't decide it then. They put out the document that is called the Use in Medical Product Development to Support Labeling Claims for Patient-Reported Outcome Measures. And the focus was what matters to the patient. So we do clinical trials and we measure the difference in, so for example, neuromuscular diseases, a change in the nerve conduction studies, and what does that really mean to the patient if the conduction velocity changes by with a significant p-value of whatever, does that really make a difference to the patient? And so we want to know what does the health condition mean to the patient. So the key thing here is that there's no interpretation, as Brett already mentioned, no interpretation of the response by the clinician or anyone else. It is a patient-reported outcome. So you ask the question, and then you don't interpret the answer. And you have documentation of the evidence that the FDA requires you to document the evidence the patient actually input into the instrument development. So again, that it's not something you think would make a difference to someone with this particular disease. It's what the patient thinks would be important. And this is your disease specific over the more generalized ones. And then you also have to have documentation that you, as you develop this outcome, that you have patient input into the performance of the instrument. So you get feedback from the patient as to the ease of use, whether or not it really was answering there was addressing the questions that you were trying to ask. And there's specific guidance in this piece from the FDA on how to develop the instruments. And what they talk about is that it's an iterative process where and you'll see from the examples where you go in, you design something, you come back, you do focus groups. There's a whole process on how to develop these so that they're meaningful, and you have to document that. If you want to use this for, as an industry, if you want to use it for approval for a drug, that there's a change in patient-reported outcome, but also for any kind of clinical trial, you have to document that it was an iterative process to be able to use it as a valid tool. And then if you change it, so if you take a patient-reported outcome and you decide to make it more disease-specific, or you change the one that you've developed, you also have to really document why you did it. There's a nice table from the FDA guidance that talks about the reasons for changing it. And then I'll talk a little bit about the review considerations. So here's reasons for change or deletion. And again, this is probably too small to really read, but the different properties that we think about for patient-reported outcomes are, is the particular item, does it have clarity or relevance to the issue that you're trying to address? And if you want to change it, it's because you've used this in a population and you say, well, this isn't really relevant to most of us. Maybe a very small part of it, and it's not going to end up being significant, or it's not clear enough, and people will misinterpret what you're trying to ask. What's the response range? Is there too many people who are at the floor of the scale, at the worst end, or too many people who are at the optimal end? So your scales from 0 to 36, for example, we use later, and too many people end up at 36 being the worst. And there's too much variability. So either there's no variance, so for one particular question, everybody gives pretty much the same answer, or there's no consistency. And here's, this is really important to show that there's too much variability in time. Hello? Is it reproducible? Is there inter-item correlation? So you don't want to be, you want to have a high correlation between items that are related, so that, again, that you're showing that the answers are valid as well. You want to be able to detect change. So if the item isn't sensitive enough, you're not going to detect change. Why are you even asking the question? Redundancy, too much redundancy is a problem. And then the recall period. So are you not giving enough time? Are you giving people too much time to look back? And so they have to look at records, things like that. Is it important for a particular disease state that you recall over a longer period of time, a shorter period of time, et cetera? So these are the kind of things that you might end up changing, because after you test in the population, you realize that you're not being able to measure what you're looking at. So the FDA looks at, primarily in their review, stated in the guidance, they're looking at the reliability of your tool, the validity of your tool, that you've shown that it's reliable and that it's valid, and that it's able to detect change. They also are looking at different response option types. So there are a whole list of different response option types. Everybody's familiar with the pain scale, smiley face to really sad, cry face. That's what they do with visual analog scale. People can look at it and choose. You can do a Likert scale, asking people to choose out of the list of responses. You can use a pictorial scale. An example that I'm going to show later is what the proposal used to change their scale. It's a Likert and a pictorial scale that is a little bit different, just to show change a little bit better. And then you also have to consider the respondent and the administrative burden. And this is important. So as we do clinical trials, one of the things you want to do is, we talked earlier about recruitment and retention. If every time somebody has to come see you for their clinical trial visit, they feel that it's a burden to do your patient-reported outcome, you're going to start losing information, or you're going to start losing patients. So you have to look at things like the length of the questionnaire or the interview. And you can do patient-reported outcomes by interview. You just have to be careful to be consistent in that way. But if it's too long, people are going to get burned out and stop answering the questions. You can look at the formatting and the font size. If it's a written thing, that it has to be a comfortable font size. This is all in the FDA guidance. So the new instructions for each item, if you keep giving people different instructions, so the first item, they give you instructions to do, scale is from 0 to 5, and the next one is you think that you are most, you are never, sometimes, always. So each question is a different instruction. You end up getting questionnaire fatigue with that. If you require them to consult records to be able to complete the patient-reported outcomes, so you have to go back and look at the diary, that's not a reason to invalidate the patient-reported outcome, but it's something else to consider. You're asking to do something else. Patient-reported outcomes, also, you have to ensure that there's privacy in the area where the patient is doing this. So if you're asking sensitive questions, you don't want to have them filling out the patient-reported outcome in the waiting room with, a lot of other people sitting there, maybe somebody kind of like looking over their shoulder, or even another family member in the room that gives sensitive information that they may not want to share with anyone else. So you have to make sure that there's privacy. They have to have adequate time to complete, so if you have them do it, they come in the room, they have 15 minutes, and it's a patient who has perhaps some writing difficulty or something like that, and they have a long patient report out. Not enough time to fill it out. They're going to rush through it, maybe not give you the adequate answers, or they may just stop. The literacy level is too high. If you're asking questions of patients that they're unable to answer, again, this is the importance of having focus groups, patient involvement in the development of the tools, patient involvement in trials of the tools. If people say, people consistently don't answer question 10, you can look at question 10 and see why they're not answering. And then sometimes the perception that the interviewer wants or expects a specific answer. So it's important to also, especially if you're interviewing people and asking the questions, that there's a specific way that you ask the question so that it doesn't give a bias to the patient that you want them to say yes. They should say yes, or they should say no. They should tell you everything's great or everything's bad or I feel old now. So you have to be very specific about, be careful not to bias the patient. And then, of course, if they need some physical help to complete, so many of our patients can't complete their questionnaires in my clinic. And so if they need help to complete, that's something else to consider the document that it's not interfering with the patient. So there's also, in the FDA guidance, there's a whole section on modification. So anytime you modify an instrument, you need to make sure that it's still valid and reliable. So even something as simple as taking something from paper to electronic. And I had actually a long conversation with someone who developed a health index and patient-reported outcome that we wanted to use. They were happy to give it to us, but we had to pay for printing at their particular institute because the colors had to be exactly the same because that's how it was validated. And so if I made it black and white, it changed the validity of the questionnaire. And we're still in discussions about that. But so just changing from color to black and white perhaps would definitely change from paper to electronic. We need to make sure that it still has the same validity. Timing of the procedure, so let's say you do the patient-reported outcome always in the first thing in the morning, in the beginning, and then you start changing it. Well, I'm going to do an EMG first, and then I'm going to do the patient-reported outcome, and you might get different answers. So the timing of how you do it, or you do it, start doing it at the end of the day, or you ask them to do it at home and bring it in, then it may change the validity. Same thing about the setting. If you're using a different population or a different disease state, you may need to revalidate it. And other things is if you change the order. So there's, changing the order can change the way the patient answers the question. It's like changing the wording because you don't like it, you leave out the word when you're interviewing somebody, or you change the phrasing. You ask them to look back for a longer period of time instead of 2 weeks. And then also just changing the instructions or where the instructions are invalidating the patient report outcome. So these are all things that you think might not make that much of a difference and can make a big difference. There's a whole section of clinical trial design in the FDA guidance. It doesn't go into any detail that go into obviously this course, or even in some other places where we read about clinical trial design. The key thing is that they point about patient-reported outcomes is it's just like any other part of the clinical trial design, any other measure that they use. And so there's a nice nice discussion about how you might want to think a little bit differently about patient-reported outcomes. You know, how frequent are you going to assess them? You know, so that you get useful information. Maybe for chronic diseases you need to do less frequently. Maybe you need to do in diseases that fluctuate. Maybe you need to do 3 baseline measures. There's some good points in this document that I think you can find useful. And then you also need to think about how you're going to interpret this using the definition. So there's also specific concerns when using electronic patient-reported outcomes, and they specifically state things that, you know, you read it and you're like, oh yeah, of course. You're going to have a patient enter something directly into electronically, and now we have all these things where people are doing their patient-reported outcomes. You might be able to do it on an app, right? That may be something that people can do. Is there some kind of backup server that you have so that data doesn't get lost? Is there security to that system? A whole list of things that you need to consider if you're using electronic ones.
So I just want to say a word about how we're getting paid in the future as healthcare providers. Raise your hand if you're familiar with macro. That's depressingly low. Very important that you guys understand what this is, the Medicare Access and Chip Reauthorization Act of 2015. This is a major piece of legislation that dramatically impacts how we're going to get paid going forward. And so this was important to point out. This was passed in both houses in a bipartisan fashion. So I'll show you the House and the Senate votes there, signed into law in April of 2015. This is a complicated slide, but it explains a little bit about how we get paid right now. You may be aware that there's the EHR incentive program where you have to show that you're using an EHR to get paid a little bit extra. It used to be first a bonus payment, now it's a penalty if you're not on an electronic medical record. Then we have to report things like PQRS. I hope these letters are making sense to you. Patient quality, I don't know what PQRS reporting system, I think. I'm making that up though. That is where we have to, for every patient, ensure that we're doing a couple of key quality indicators. For example, in our clinic, we look at falls, we look at smoking cessation. We just, for every patient in a standardized way, have to report that we're complying with more than 80% of patient visits, that we're doing this, or to report to Medicare that we are being compliant, otherwise we will get a penalty. The CAHPS is a patient satisfaction score that is measured routinely. And then there's a discussion about value-based modifiers. So right now, on the left-hand side, this is how we have to report every year, or else you get a penalty from Medicare in terms of your payments. And based on the MACRA bill, there's 2 ways to report going forward. Starting in 2017 and required by 2019, you can see the merit-based incentive payment system, which is going to incorporate all the things you see on the left. And basically, it's going to be meaningful use, quality of care, resource utilization, and demonstration of performance improvement. You're going to have to report on those, or you can be in an alternative payment model, which really refers to things like ACOs. Okay, and I put out here that things in orange, so the whole middle box and the quality side of this are really going to be a patient report outcome about their satisfaction with your care. And here's the consequence. So this is a graph that I want to lay out for you. You can see time going across the x-axis from 2015 out to 2024. You can see a blue line. And what this shows is that above that baseline, there's a very slight payment increase that Medicare is going to provide year over year. You can see that it amounts to not a tremendous amount over a span of almost 10 years, a couple percent, but a steady increase instead of holding the budget flat. But what you see here is right now there's no incentive for reporting these measures, but there's a penalty, and the penalty gets deeper until 2018. If you're not on EHR, if you're not doing PQRS, you are going to take a reduction in Medicare payments for your billing. And then starting with the new MIPS, you can see that that starts with about a 4% plus or minus in 2019. and it expands to 9% by 2022. So that how you're doing in terms of patient satisfaction, whether you're doing process improvement, all these things will determine everyone gets the small increase, but then you may take a penalty of up to 9% if you're not compliant. And you may take a bonus of up to 9% if you're providing the highest quality, highest patient satisfaction, and most cost-effective care. So the idea of healthy quality of life and patient satisfaction is sort of baked into all of this. So not just important for research, it's really how we're going to measure our success with care. Like it or not, this is the law going into effect. All right, so we're going to turn to the development of a patient-reported outcome measure, and this again is in one of the readings. And you can see we've sort of covered this a little bit, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but you start with the consensual framework. You move to really trying to flesh that out in terms of different domains and different items you think would be relevant to it. As you're going through, you're adjusting and trying to make it the most meaningful, the shortest, the most efficient possible. And then you start to validate it by testing it in patients, looking at the performance. And this is just pure sort of clinometrics, right? You're looking at the different items, seeing what's valid, what's not, and then you continue to iteratively change it to authenticate it. And eventually you iteratively develop a final patient-reported outcome measure. So I think what would be most useful is to talk about examples from real life. So PHQ-9 is a very good depression measure. It's I think, the best one that's available right now. And I wanted to point out how you can use it in real life. So in my clinic, I think it's very important. I, by the way, am biased towards thinking that a neurologist, and I think neurologists should care about depression and treat it. If there's one thing that we do for our patients, especially epistroke guys, so in the post-stroke setting, depression is incredibly prevalent. It's very bad for patients' quality of life and their overall outcomes. Very dependent, actually, also impacts on motor outcomes and overall the functional capacity. So I certainly think we should identify it and treat it. And I got tired of asking all the questions over and over again to my patients, and so in fact I have the PHQ-9 as a piece of paper that I will just give to them either before they come in, or if I realize I haven't asked them and I need to, I may give them a piece of paper, step out for a few minutes so they can do it at their own pace and in their own time. To be frank, it gives me a chance to document a few things, because I'm usually behind an Epic, but also then they can fill out the paper, and it helps me to understand if they're depressed or not. There's a reliable way to measure the diagnosis of major depression. A score of 10 on the PHQ-9 would indicate the treatment is likely indicated. And of course, you have to use your judgment. So if someone seems really depressed and they have an 8, I'm probably going to treat them anyway. And it's actually a very good measure that's responsive to change. You can look at the efficacy of your treatment on serial visits. Who's on Epic in the room? Something like 65% of all lives in the U.S. are covered by Epic, so not surprised most of you are. Epic has this built right in. There's a number of quality of life measures and depression measures in Epic as doc flow sheets. So if you were to go to the doc flow sheet section, you can document there very quickly what the score is, and you can have over time a graph of what that looks like. I don't know how to do this exactly, but work with your Epic people. There's a way to do a dot phrase that would magically bring the results right into your note. So it's documented clearly for other people to see. And it's available through MyChart. So if your institution uses the MyChart patient portal, you can actually push these out and have people fill them out before they arrive at clinic. So there's a whole variety of those. I would just ask you to consider whether that might fit into your clinical practice. I think it's been very useful clinically. It's been an efficiency for me. I want to say a few words about the PROMIS and the NeuroQOL and the NIH toolbox. So why would these be valid? So my personal page 23 was called Outcome and Quality of Life After Diabetic Stroke. And for aim 2, I was looking at quality of life, and I measured a whole bunch of outcomes here, the SF-36, the EQ-5, the stroke-specific quality of life. I also measured depression. At that time, I was using the CTSD, just a different standardized way of measuring depression. And it drove my nurse coordinators crazy. They were out interviewing patients and asking these questions, and so many of the questions are duplicative. They really cover the same information, the same domains. And they felt that for someone who's doing badly, who has depression and a lot of other features, we're just pounding on them, right? It's the same thing. How bad is your quality of life? How bad is your function in daily life? and they found it very depressing. And we eventually were able to prove that the SF-12 worked as well as SF-36, so that spared me for a little while, and that they had fewer questions to ask, because again, they're tedious. Some of these are very long measures as well. And this is the value of a PROMIS or the NeuroQOL and NIH toolbox, is that because of the computerized adaptive design, you're able to ask fewer questions and really get the same information. And then my example of a patient-reported outcome measure has to do with post-stroke spasticity. In full disclosure, the project I'm working with has been funded by Allergan. Spasticity, it refers to velocity-dependent increase in muscle tone, accompanied by increased reflex activity. And the problem is this is kind of a vague term, but patients don't really understand well what spasticity is. And even among providers, I think there's variable definitions of how people are, what they would consider spasticity. This often gets into other movement disorder terms like stiffness, rigidity, dystonia, all things that can be present in, for example, in a post-stroke patient. And there are several scores for assessing or measuring spasticity. And I've listed them here for you. Raise your hand if you're trained on any of these scores, the Ashworth, modified Ashworth, pen spasm frequency, or modified Turner. Anybody? Like 4 people, 5 people. Not particularly common scales. I think they're a little bit cumbersome and hard to use, but valid and literature standard. But it was thought that there might be a better way to assess